Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Welcome to the Bold Book of the Day. My name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today, I am so excited for our guests because we have Dr. Movita Johnson Harrell in the house. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Denise. I'm very grateful to be here.
I remember meeting you in Washington, D.C., and you were so impactful. Your story was so powerful. And I've been thinking about having you on this show for a long time. So I'm grateful that we're able to make it happen. Thank you so much for accepting your book as the Bold Book of the Day.
Thank you.
Phoenix Ascending, My Rise from the Ashes. It's a deeply personal memoir. What inspired you to finally share your story with the world?
It is. I actually started writing Phoenix Ascending, My Rise from the Ashes in 1992 when I was in an active addiction. And for me, it was my way of dealing with the depression of wanting out of that kind of life, but not knowing how to get out. So I began to write. And over the years, I would just keep writing and writing and writing. And at some point, for a while, I thought it was just for me. And then at some point, I realized this was a story that needed to be shared with the masses to let people know, right, that they can rise from any situation in their lives, that we all have ashes that we have to rise from. So I literally began writing that book in 1992 and completed it in 2021.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it was an internal journey as well as a prolific journey.
Absolutely. So it was a journey of not just self discovery, but of recovery and of personal redemption, right? Because I come from 5 generations of poverty and 5 generations of addictions. And it was not unusual for me to eventually use drugs because all of my family used drugs, right? But for a lot of people who live with addictions, they don't realize that there is an out. And I didn't realize that until 1994. So, what I saw the beginning of my writing in 1992 was the beginning of my breakthrough, right? To healing.
You've experienced so much. I know that whew, it's hard to see yourself different when you don't know that there's difference, you know? You don't know that there is healing, that you need help. It's just hard to comprehend that you need something different. And it took you some time, like you said, to realize that. How was it sharing this with the world now that you realized that you needed the help? How did you articulate that to get the help that you needed?
Right. So for me, so the first time I used was March 30th, 1975, Easter Sunday. I
Oh,
was 8 years
wow.
old. I was
Oh
eight years
my
old, Dr.
God.
Denise. So what happened was two men ran up on my porch Easter Sunday, put a double barrel shotgun to my father's chest and pulled the trigger. And my father died in front of my family on my front porch. And I used for the next 20 years. And I even used against my will, right? Even when I didn't want to, because I didn't know how to get clean. So when I embarked on the journey of recovery in 1994, it was actually liberating to be able to tell my story, to be able to talk about coming from 5 generations of addictions, to be able to talk about coming from 5 generations of poverty, to be able to talk about being a child survivor of molestation and an adult survivor of rape. It was liberating because it was literally like those were chains that kept me bound for so long because they were my own sick secrets, right? But
Mm.
when I released them, because now historically in communities of color, it's been taboo to talk about those things publicly, right? But when I was able to release those chains and share my personal experiences to be able to help other people, it literally liberated me to be able to help myself.
So no more of what happens in this house stays in this house.
That part. That part.
Ooh. I know that some of the listeners have been, in situations, in familial situations where they say, what happens in this house stays in this house. And it's hard, but like Dr. Movita, you can rise out of whatever ashes and ascend to your greatness, because we all have some greatness in us. And it doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter, because you can eventually move from that story into your glory.
Absolutely. And you know what was so profound for me? It was
Mm,
that I understood that I wasn't unique, right?
mhm.
When I shared my story, I understand a lot of people don't have the capacity to get gut level honest like I was able to get in my book, and even when I do motivational speaking, right? But
Yeah.
everybody has their own ashes. Like, living this life can be painful, and we've
Mm,
all suffered something in this life, but we all can also take motivation from other people to be able to rise.
yes. Whoa, 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 whoa. What was the most challenging part about opening up about your trauma?
I think the most challenging part about speaking about my trauma and using that as a catalyst to empower other people was that it made me vulnerable, right? And at some point, Dr. Denise, I said, do I really want to do this? Right? Because even my mother said, like, you're putting your business all out there. And here's the thing, a lot of the things that I share in the book, I hadn't talked about ever publicly, right? And there's an old saying, you're only as sick as your secrets. And once I allowed myself to be vulnerable and I talked about those secrets, then they no longer had power over me anymore. Right.
That's right.
So, but the beginning part of sharing that was very, it was terrifying of sorts.
Yeah. Because you're not sure how people are going to, you know, receive what you're saying.
Yeah.
But once you started saying it, it was freeing.
Absolutely. It was like an
You know,
internal revolution was occurring, right?
mm,
That
mm,
something was going on inside of me where, and here's the thing that we often don't understand. For whatever people believe in, I'm a highly spiritual person. I practice a
mm.
religion, but I live spirituality, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
for
yes,
whatever,
that part. We're not going to go over that. Okay. Yes. Because you can practice religion and not be spiritual.
that
Hello.
part,
Okay,
that
go
part,
ahead. Go ahead.
but for
I don't mean
whatever
to interrupt
people
you, but that was a word, honey.
for whatever people believe in, we have to trust that the process that we're going through, whatever pain we're going through, the divinity and the universe is actually using it to move us to where we need to be in our lives. So while many of us may go through some extremely painful situations, just understand that all of it is for the benefit of your good. And a
Yeah.
lot of times it may not feel like it while we're in it, but it's to help us to get to the next level on where the universe needs us to be.
God is real. God is
Oh, the
real.
girl.
Who, and a lot of times when we see things happening that we don't like, we don't understand, and we know we have to fight for, because there's injustice and we know we have to fight, but we're like, where is God in all of this? God do not play with his children, and he's going to use all of it for the good, so one day you can stand on your story with confidence, honey. You said something earlier about practicing religion, but you're very spiritual. And I appreciate that, because I see a lot of religious people that don't have any God in them.
Absolutely.
They just want what they want. There's no God in them, but God is a God that will vindicate his people.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. You also said that, once you started talking about your traumas, that you felt better. And the Bible said the truth shall set you free.
Yes.
So it's in speaking up that will give you the relief, and just find the right people to talk to. Sometimes we don't know who to go to first. And one of the first things I like to say is, just first of all, just make it come out of your mouth. Say it to anybody, honey. Talk to anybody. Just make it come out
Yes.
of your mouth. But then find good counsel so that you can move from from a low place, and take you into revelation, into the path that you want to grow into. So you start by just telling somebody. Get it off of your chest. I have a client that said that she told a 13-year-old girl was her I guess her super person. Everybody have that hero in their life, and her hero was a 13-year-old girl. She just told another 13-year-old girl, they were both 13, and she told
Mm-hmm.
another 13-year-old, and the 13-year-old said, listen, I'm gonna have to tell my mom, because my mom may have to call the police. And that conversation, just sharing it with that 13-year-old, changed her life.
Yeah. So Dr. Denise, I even encourage people, if you need to begin by writing, by
Mhm.
journaling, right?
Yes.
Until you get the courage to be able to tell someone,
Yes.
just write it down.
Yes.
The quicker you can get it out of you, the quicker you can be able to clean up the wreckage, the garbage of your past, right?
Yes.
And the
Yes.
one thing that we must understand in the process of healing, because everything I do is about healing and empowerment. And I
Mhm.
had to start with my own first before I could help somebody else with theirs, right?
Yes.
But I had to realize, even in the worst storms that I've been able to be in, and I equate the storms like you've seen the hurricanes in
Mm.
Florida, right, where palm trees are swaying back and forth, but the roots are firmly planted in the ground. Well, that's how
Mhm.
God has us, right? He has us planted, and the storms are coming, and we're swaying back and forth, and we don't know if we coming or going, but we stay planted, right? But what I
Mhm.
tell people is, we got to make sure that the pain of living is not better than the joy of living,
Ooh, the
right? And we
pain of
got to
living
also
is not better than
understand
the
that
joy of
God is
living.
good, even when life ain't. God is
Mm.
still good.
Yes. Wow. And his goodness and mercies will last forever.
Yes.
Yes. I know you talk much about faith in your memoir. How has faith helped you navigate these darkest moments?
Girl, faith has been everything for me. And so I got my sense of faith and spirituality from my great grandmother, who died at 103 years old.
Oh,
She
God
was
bless her.
my North Star. She was my beacon through all of the chaos and confusion. She was a devout Baptist woman, and she worshiped at the same church for almost 70 years. And even when my mother converted to Islam in 1975, I continued to go to church with my grandmother, right? And what my grandmother told me as a child, when my mother converted, she didn't care. She said, here's the thing, it doesn't matter what you call him, long as you can call him when you need him. And I've kept that with me my entire life. Like, to be able to call on God in the most darkest times of my life has been the driving force to my survival in this life, right? And my faith has been
Yes.
everything, getting me through. I mean, I've lived some of the worst things people could ever imagine, but it has been my
Amen.
faith. And what my
Mm.
faith has done, how I have been able to survive, is because my trust in God, and my faith in the divine, and my faith in the hereafter, to be totally honest, has allowed me to stop asking why. When something in my life happens that's difficult for me, I don't ask why. I ask what. Because I understand, when something difficult happens, something positive, it's my job to counter that bad situation with something positive. So instead of asking, why did this happen to me? I ask, what do you want me to do as a result of this?
Who? So it's not, why is this happening to me? The victim mentality is, what have you called me to do? Because I'm
Absolutely.
going through this, you've called me for something.
Absolutely.
Who? Yes. Guys, you must go out there and get this book, Phoenix Ascending, My Rise from Ashes. It is a deep book, but what is even deeper is that you're going to go through a journey along with Dr. Movita. You're going to go on this journey. And she said that she started this journey, many years. You started writing at your lowest point. As a
Yes.
survivor of sexual assault and addiction, you've had to face multiple layers of trauma. How did you approach the healing, and what advice do you have to give to others who are struggling to overcome,
So
this similar experiences?
yeah, so the beginning of my healing journey was actually writing,
Mm,
journaling, right? And that began in 19, well, actually, my mother began me journaling as a little girl, but I wasn't consistent with it. But in
mhm.
1992, there was a voice in my head. And this was like the third time that I contemplated suicide. I had two suicide attempts as a teenager. And of course they were both unsuccessful, but at this point in 1992 I was so internally destitute that I wanted to commit suicide, but I couldn't because I had 4 children,
Oh,
right? So I began, a voice in my head said, write. And I began writing, and I would just write, and I would cry through the pain, and I would just write. And for me, 2 years later, I wind up getting clean. I got clean
yeah.
September 15th, 1994. I just celebrated 30 years clean and in recovery,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm, mm.
But in
Yeah.
1994, when, the Child Protective Services Organization in Philadelphia knocked on my door one more time and said, look, Miss Johnson, we know you love these kids, but they can't live here anymore. And
Mm,
God will use a situation to get what he wants from you. It was time for me to change. It was time for me to move into the greatness that God had planned for me.
for
So
you.
he did that by way of DHS, which is the Department of Human Services. But when I go out and I speak to women in organizations, what I tell them is, you never know what he's going to use to change your life, right?
Right.
It could be jail, it could be parole and probation, it could be recovery, it could be your children, it could be a bad relationship. So you have to pay attention because we always hear the voice. We have to tune in to
Mhm.
hear the voice. And when I got clean, my journey of recovery was about self-healing and self-empowerment because I had 4 children that I wanted to provide the best life possible for.
Yes. Oh my God, your story is one of resilience. I am so proud to be, you know, to know you, to know
Thank
that
you.
I have met this woman, this strong, resilient woman. I have met you, and you are an inspiration. What I know you do, if I remember correctly, you have some um, activism that you're involved in. Your work with MECCA. How has that work influenced your personal healing?
So I began MECCA in November of 1999, and MECCA is an acronym for Motivations, Education, and Consultation Associates. And what I did was, so when my father was murdered in 1975, I lost my father, my mother, and my only brother. My mother then succumbed to her depression and self-medicated with drugs and alcohol, and I had to grow up very quickly. My brother, who was 2 years older than me at the time, he was 11 years old, wound up being diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder. And I wound up going into the mental health profession. When I got clean and went back to school, went to an Ivy League university, graduated in 2004 with 5 degrees, the last of which was a master's in social work. And
Hmm.
because I wanted to understand why my family functioned the way that it functioned. And my
Hmm.
brother had actually been murdered July 1st, 1991. He was chronically mentally ill. He was homeless. He was on drugs, and he had full custody of his 5-year-old son. And he wound up being murdered over a boy, just trying to stay at a girl's house to put a roof over his son's head. So when I created MECCA, to be able to provide special needs housing for the sickest of the sick and the poorest of the poor. And I did that for 25 years, right? And my activism at that time was around dual diagnoses, people with chronic mental illness, intellectual disabilities, addictions, medical frailties. And then then my advocacy and activism actually changed. It shifted in January of 2011. And what happened was, I got clean. I was doing well. I had everything that I had ever dreamed of, and was able to provide a wonderful life for my children. In January 13th, 2011, my 18-year-old son was murdered in a case of mistaken identity. And he was my youngest child of 4, and he was my baby in every sense of the word. And it was so devastating for me that the only thing that I knew to do in the moment, and I didn't ask why. Remember what I told you? I didn't ask why. I asked what. And very organically, we created the Charles Foundation. My son's name was Charles Johnson. Charles is an acronym for Creating Healthy Alternatives Results in Less Emotional Suffering. And through the Charles Foundation, I did traditional grief support, and it re-traumatized me. And after the 3rd time of going to a grief support group, I told my husband I'm never going back there again because it's not helping me. And here's the thing, we have to take responsibility for our own healing. I don't care what happens in your life. You can get 100 therapists, you can read 100 self-help books, but you have to take responsibility for your own healing, because healing is not one size fits all, right? And when I went to those grief support groups and they re-traumatized me, I said, I'm never going back there again. I'm a mental health professional by trade and training. I said, I need to do what I need to do because I felt like I was losing my mind, right? So I coined a term called survivors empowerment, and I began to do survivors empowerment groups, which actually moved people from pain to power to activism, right? I help people to lift up their voices, to advocate on behalf of their loved ones and community. But then what I also began to do was to go out, and it happened like wildfire and very naturally. Because my family is so popular in Philadelphia, when young people would get shot, people would just say word of mouth, you need to call Movita and Yancey. That's me and my husband, right? And we would show up at homicide scenes and at hospitals and coroner's offices and at funeral homes. And we would pay for funerals and janazas for people's children. And we would buy groceries and get lights turned on. And the Charles Foundation was formed.
You were deep in.
And 10 toes down, right? And that was my healing process. Helping other people has always to help me feel better about whatever situation I'm in.
Yes. So your activism involved not just you, but your family. You shaped your entire life, your family included, to just help go through these traumas from losing your son, and that's one of the deepest pain that a woman can feel, is losing your child. How on earth, I see that you use activism to help you, but how on earth do you continue to cope just having such great loss? And I know that was just the beginning, because I know your story.
Yeah.
So that was just the beginning of one of the great losses.
Yeah. And here's the thing, I had to keep getting up, right? Because I had 3 surviving children. My son Charles was engaged to be married. His fiance was pregnant. 26 days after Charles died, his only child was born. 5 weeks later, my daughter, who was a year older than Charles, had a baby. So I now have 2 13-year-olds. And my daughter got sick. after Charles died. Like literally at 19 years old, she developed unmanageable hypertension. She had survivor's remorse. He came to pick her up. So she blamed herself for his death. And my daughter became very ill. In over 9 years, her hypertension killed her kidneys. And
Yes.
at 28 years old, my daughter went into end-stage renal failure.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Wow.
was another devastation, right? But that voice in the
Right.
back of my head, and I'm gonna tell you, if you pay attention, you know what God's voice sounds like. And God
Mm-hmm.
told me that I was going to be the one to give my daughter a kidney, and August 29th made a year that I gave my daughter a kidney, right? And I
Oh,
don't even
okay.
think you know that part of
I
the
don't know
story.
that part because I haven't seen you. I think I saw you January of 2023
Yes,
or 22, but
I think
it
it was
was early.
22. Yeah,
22 February of 2022. So I haven't
yeah,
seen you in a minute. It's, oh my goodness, 24 is almost over.
yeah.
Wow, you are even more amazing than I can like imagine, like I'd ever imagine. You're beyond a trooper. Okay, you're a hero. You're a hero.
We do the best we can with what we have, right? So here's the thing, and you do know this part of the story. Even after standing on the front line of gun violence, after my son Charles was murdered, participating in strategies, nobody would fund those strategies. I ran for office and made history as the first Muslim woman ever elected to a Pennsylvania legislative seat, right? And I went up to
Stand up.
Harrisburg and I went to our state's capital and I bought back $1.3 million for a strategy that is up and running right now in Philadelphia with a 50% reduction in gun violence. Right.
Mm.
And even after that, like I was a threat. And here's the thing, in communities of color, gun violence is big business. Our children dying and our children going to prison is big business. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
make a lot of money off of that. So a lot of people were not happy with what I was doing. In my swearing in, they told me I wasn't welcome. A white
Mm.
Republican evangelist got up to the podium at my swearing in and said, "Every knee will bow to Jesus and every tongue will speak his name." And I'm looking at her like, I love Jesus. What is she talking about? And then when she said,
Mm-hmm.
I stand with Donald Trump, with Israel against Palestine, she was saying, Muslim, go home. We don't want you. And I knew that I was not going to be there for long. So I went right to work, bringing back that $1.3 million and over $8 million in improvements for my community. And as a 9-month freshman, I was indicted for corruption.
Wow. You know, a lot of the thing is that people just don't want to, they don't want to learn about other religion. They don't want to learn about other people. And a lot of it is greed. They just want what they want, and that's
Absolutely.
it. That's it.
Absolutely.
They just want what they want, and that's it. But I'm so proud of you for standing up. And despite their vile accusation, you became what was needed for the community. And I hope that the community stood by you despite all of the.
The community has, even when I had to take a
Okay.
plea. So I took a plea because they threatened to prosecute my husband and my daughter if I did not take a plea. So I took the plea. I did what I needed to do to protect my family. And the community
Yes.
did stand with me. The community continues to stand with me. And, you know, I'm still very, very active in the community, even to the
Yeah.
point, you know, my son Dante stood on the front line with me for a decade after his brother was murdered. And my
Mm-hmm.
son has spoke in front of the House of Representatives. He spoke in front of Senate. He's pounded the pavements nationally for gun violence prevention. And on March 5th, 2021, my last son went to California for a weekend trip with 4 friends. Someone ran
Yeah.
into a strip mall, shooting 6 people. My son was the only fatality. So I lost my second son.
Mm,
I lost
mm,
my
mm,
second
mm.
son. And the fact that I'm not in a padded room with my arms tied behind my back in a white jacket is truly God's grace and mercy. Truly.
Boy, you've been through it, but you know, your story is not just resilience, but you've emerged as, like you said, from the ashes as a leader.
Yeah. And so the ability to be able to help people, I think, and here's the thing that many of us don't realize why we're put on this earth. We are such selfish and self-centered people from the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
time that we don't understand that it's not about us, right? I
Yeah.
understand that it's not about me. I
Yes.
understand that I am responsible for my community. I am responsible to make sure that my grandchildren live in a world that is conducive to their healing and their safety, right?
That's
And
right.
if we
Yeah.
all practice that line of thinking and that action in our daily movement, then this world would be a much better place. It's not about us. And I
Yes.
understand, like, even when Dante was murdered, I never asked God why. I
Ooh.
said, what?
Wow. I don't know. I am so grateful that you're here, giving us this insight on how we can turn our greatest fears into a what now God. Because that is not easy, Dr. Movita. That is not easy. And you've done it with such resilience and the grace, because I've met you. When this woman walks in the room, you know that she is led, that she's spiritual, that she's walking with God, that she is walking with protection. So I can feel your energy, and I am so grateful that I have gotten the chance to meet you. How can the viewers get a chance to get to know you a little bit deeper?
So you can follow me on social media, or you can go to my website. My website is my name, Movita, Movita Johnson Harrell, HARRELL.com, MovitaJohnsonHarrell.com. All of my social media is Movita Johnson Harrell. And even if you go to my IG, we've actually created just some inspirational stories about some of the pieces of my life that are pinned to the top of my Instagram. Trust me, if you go and watch one of those pinned stories, you will be inspired to rise from your ashes. I promise you. Because here's the thing, I understand that God has placed a divine calling on my life. I understand that my life is not my own. I understand that the only reason why I'm able to get up every day and do the work that I do. Listen, Dr. Denise, Saturday, I was out in West Philadelphia, one of the highest rates of gun violence in the city, with 100 young people in the community between 14 and 18 years old. We paid them, the Charles Foundation pays them $20 an hour to clean, green, and beautify the community. These kids are not church kids. These kids come from every corner of the city. All I got to do is post it on my social media, and 200 kids will show up. Well, guess what? No arguments, no fights. Once we get them, we teach them conflict resolution, anger management, social skills, financial literacy. Listen, they want help.
Yes.
They
Yes.
want help. We have to be
Yes.
responsible. We have to not be afraid of our young people, but stand in the gap, because a lot of them come from the same kind of situations that I came from. Parents
Mm-hmm.
on drugs, no heat or food in the house, and they just want somebody to love on them.
Yeah, so stand up and stand in the gap, because
Yes,
they are our future. They are our future. And if we remember that we're not going to be strong and able all our lives, but these children, the future doctors, the future police officers, the future lawyers, the future social workers, these young people are going to be the people that will be standing in the gap for
that's
us.
right.
Yes.
That's
You
right.
know, you've been clean for over 30 years. And that recovery journey, I know, must have been and continues to be hard. How have you committed to sobriety all this? How do you continue to commit to sobriety when
September
you've gone through so many different traumas, over the years?
September 14th, 1994, I looked at my four children, who were 2, 3, 4, and 8, and I told them that I was never going to use drugs again. And in 30 years, I have not used drugs or alcohol. I don't even smoke cigarettes. I made that promise to my children. I've lived by that
Yes.
promise to my children. At some point, the promise I made to myself, right? So I made a decision in my mind. Once I got clean and learned how to stay clean, the difficulty is learning how to live clean, right? Once I
Yes.
learned
Yeah.
how to live clean, using was no longer an option. I don't care what happened in my life. When my son listen, my only reservation when I got clean was if something happened to one of them four children, I know I'm not going to be able to survive it without using. When my son
Mm.
Charles was murdered, I didn't even have a desire to use. When my
Mm-hmm.
son Dante was murdered, I did not have a desire to use. When my daughter went into end-stage renal failure, I did not have a desire to use. I made a promise to my children and I made a promise to myself, and I have an agreement with my God. Keep getting
Yeah.
me up. Just keep getting me up. I'll do the rest. I'm willing to
How
do
do,
the work.
how do you define success? Because you've clearly been through a lot and have had a lot of setbacks, but you've also reached a lot of milestone and reached some of the goals that you've set out to. How do you define success now?
So you know what's so funny, Dr. Denise? A lot of the things like these tremendous heights I've reached was never on my to-do list.
But God.
But God, making history as the first Muslim woman ever elected, that was never on. I never wanted to be a politician, right? I was the first homicide survivor to run victim services under progressive district attorney Larry Krasner in Philadelphia. I was fourth in command in the Philadelphia district attorney's office. That was never on my list of to-dos. You know what my list of to-do is? You know what success is for me? Being able to look in the mirror and like the person looking back.
Woo!
It's really very simple.
I
Listen,
woke
Dr.
up and like
Denise,
myself this morning. Okay.
Dr. Denise, I've traveled the world. I've
Yes.
stood on the pyramids. I've touched the
Yes.
Sphinx. I made
Yeah.
Hajj. I spent a month in Saudi Arabia and Africa. I have an
Mm-hmm.
orphanage of 71 children in Uganda. I've done things that people have dreamed of. That's not how I measure my success. I measure those things as blessings that God allowed me to experience in this life to be able to encourage other people to experience them. But how I measure success is looking in the mirror and
Mm-hmm.
loving that person that looks back at me, no matter what anybody has to say about it, because I've been condemned. People don't even know the truth about my prosecution, right? And I've been
Mm.
condemned. But I love that woman looking back at me in the mirror.
Yes, yes, that's success for you. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Whew, thank you so much for joining me today and just sharing a bit of your awesomeness. Thank you so much for the activism that you're doing in this world. You're a fierce, woman, fierce person to reckon with. And I am so grateful that the world has you as, one of the people that is standing in the gap for young people, but is also standing in the gap for justice.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I am looking forward to us meeting up and working together one more time. Now, before
Absolutely.
we go, please just share with people again, one more time, how can they reach out and be a part of any program that you have available?
So I am very easy to find. All of my social media is Movita Johnson Harrell. Is Movita Johnson Harrell. My website is movitajohnsonharrell.com. Please go out and purchase my book, Phoenix Ascending, My Rise from the Ashes. Also, there is a documentary that came out October 2nd of 2023. It is called Murders That Matter. In 2016, a filmmaker came to Philadelphia, wanted to follow me for 6 months, wound up following me for 6 years. It is a very moving story about Black lives.
Wow. You guys write this down so that you can stay a part of this greatness and be a part of the transforming of the people around her. As long as she has breath, she's going to be working. I can tell she's a fierce activist. So I can tell that you're going places, you're doing more things. There's more greatness for us to witness. Thank you so much. Before you go, there are 3 questions that I love to ask all of my guests.
Yes.
What's one bold promise that you can share with the audience?
One bold promise is that I am going to continue to walk whatever path God lays for me, no matter how painful.
Amen. And what's a bold statement that you can share with the audience that can cause a paradigm shift?
A bold statement that I can share with you, if you are watching this podcast, just understand that if you are not a part of the solution, then you are a part of the problem.
Whew, that part. She did not come to play with us. She's going to step on your toes this morning, okay? If you are not part of the solution, then you are part of the problem.
That part.
Okay. What's a bold move that you'd like to make in the future? Because I know that you have, you're going to be doing some other things. You're doing some things. So what else is in the future for you, Dr. Movita?
So my bold move, Dr. Denise, is my movie. So my book has been turned in. Well, first of all, Phoenix Ascending, My Rise from the Ashes has a second part that will be released April of 2025 on my son Dante's, but would have been my son Dante's 35th birthday. And my books have actually been turned into a screenplay. So right now I am getting offers on my movie. So I want that on a screen so that people can see it, right? It's a difference. Some of us can't read because we are traumatized, but a lot of people are very visual. So to be able to see my story on a big screen, I think will be powerful for the masses.
Yes. Oh, please, please, please. I want to be all a part of it. Come back when that book is out next spring, and
Yes.
definitely when the movie is coming out. I would love to share that with the audience. So please make sure you continue to reach out with me so that we can share that with the world, because the world needs to know, like you said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, if you have a story, if you've been through something, if there are some lessons that you have learned from your experiences in life, please get that message out of you and into the world. There
Yes.
is somebody waiting to hear the hope that you have, because it seems to you as nothing, but there's someone waiting in their desperation, just waiting for that life saver. And your words, your book, your story is that life saver. So please share your message. If you would like for me to help you with your book, to get your book idea out of your head and onto paper, send me an email at authordnicholson@gmail.com and get your book idea out of your head and onto paper. And if you would like to follow up with Dr. Movita this morning or follow up with her in the future, please reach out today. Don't put it off. Don't delay. This is important. Do it today. Do it now. Okay? You are hearing this because there is something for you to do. So don't think that there are any coincidences, because there are no coincidences, honey.
None.
And God is real and He is speaking to you today. Do it now. Reach out today. Start spreading your message today. Oh my goodness. You've been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your story is deep. You've been through so much, from just witnessing your father's death at the tender age of 8, and then going through many different traumas, but then to see you lose your 2 sons to a violent death. I know that God has set aside a special place in heaven for a woman like you.
I mean,
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson, or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.